Mr. Franklin.
Good morning, Mike Franco, Administrator. Jane and Pat asked me to put this summary together on the purge process, and this is what I came up with. In June 2003, the board received Directive 2003-05 and conducted the 2003 National Change of Address, otherwise known as the NCOA program, and cancellation programs, confirmation mailings. Voters identified on the NCOA disc from the Secretary of State's office that matched Cuyahoga County's database as moving in the 24-month period since the 2001 NCOA file, and voters who did not appear to vote in an election during the period of May 9, 2001 and ending May 6, 2003 were sent confirmation notices on October 11, 2003, which is by forwarding mail. Voters that did not respond to that confirmation mailing within 30 days were automatically placed in an inactive status in the database. Voters that returned the confirmation card were updated accordingly and given an active status. Voters who did not respond to the confirmation mailing or have any voter activity, which means no system-generated activity, or did not vote in any elections shall not be canceled until after the 4-year anniversary date in 2007, and that's coming right off of the directive. This would make the cancellation date October 11th, 2007. Now, because of our a few reasons here, we did not feel it was appropriate to cancel these people on October 11th, 2007 for the following reasons. Close of registration for November 6, 2007 general election was on October 9th, 2007, and we did not want to purge voters 2 days after the close of the November 6th general election. During some of the local elections in September, October, and the general election in 2007, we realized we had voters from that 2003 purge list that were actually voting. 397 of those voters that were on the purge list actually voted in the September, October, and November elections. So in an effort to keep these voters on the rolls and prevent them from becoming possible provisional voters in future elections, we held off on the purge. And since we were picking up more voters with each election that transpired, we made an agreement to purge after the March 4th 2008 presidential primary election voter history was completed to see if we would pick up any more of those voters. Now, voter history is done in 3 steps. There's voter history for provisional voters, voter history for absentee voters, and then there's voter history for the polling location voters. The absentee and provisional voter history is already completed for the March 4th election, and we picked up, I believe it was another 200 voters from the purge list that voted just absentee and provisionally for March 4th. On the next page is pretty much statistical information concerning the purge. The original list that the IS department came up with for the purge for 2003 was 44,090. Last night, Helen reran some more reports and did a little bit more investigating and found like another 1,500 that could be added to that list. Total number on the purge list as of May 5th, this is including the provisionals and absentees from the March 4th election, is 34,604. And of that, voters that had activity to their records since that August 28th purge list was created, 1,553 voters were activated because of duplicate merges, office corrections, or petition signing. That's considered voter activity, and it puts them back in an active status. 397 voted in the November 6th election and March 4th election. 8,342 voters were canceled for other reasons, felony, deceased, and moved out of county. Some of these records were older records that were in our old database that had no reason to vote attached to them, so we couldn't identify them easily. We had to go through them record by record. And some voters have already been sent a new registration card, and that registration card came back with missing information, required information to be registered to vote, such as birth date or signature. Statistics as of 5/5/2008, we have a total of 668,004 active voters in the system. 389,226 of those are inactive records. Pending, 10,733, which gives us a total of 1,067,963 voters as of May 5th in the registration system. Census voting age population as of July 2006 is 993,525. So Cuyahoga County voters is 1,067,963. Eligible census voting age is 993,525. If we include the 35,604 that will be purged after the March election, plus whatever voters we pick up that voted in the polling locations at March, that leaves us over an overage of 38,834 voters that we are over the census figure. A 4-year cycle, so I don't know who purged in 2002 or why that was done, but somebody purged something. And the other records in August 2003, 332 were purged. In July 2003, 2 records were purged. I believe that is a clerical error.
So currently, voter registration in Cuyahoga County is at 107%.
Correct. And that's saying that every person over the age of 18 is registered to vote.
Okay. And if you do the purge, it's down about 104% with the numbers. And I mean, I don't know, it's just been my experience that generally, maybe 80% of the people that are eligible to vote actually register to vote. And that would give you a figure closer to 794,000,
Right.
795,000 people.
Now, I wasn't always involved in the purges. I just started getting involved in this one in 2003. That's why I'm commenting on what happened from that purge on. Prior to that, I know there was some confusion on purging. There was some debating going on, and I believe it was 2001 where records were purged. They were put back on the system because of, for whatever reason, I don't know. I just remember it. And so I don't know if purges were always done correctly in the past. And I don't really trust the transaction history in the system. The IS department, Helen doesn't trust it too much either, so it's kind of hard to decipher who was actually purged prior to this 2001 purge. I do know that we still have approximately 65,000 duplicate records we have to go through. And if we finish those, that would cancel another, possible 10,000 records.
They're under the law and the normal mailings that would have been done, you would have expected to see purge records, voter registration cancellations in 2003 and 2005.
Yes.
But what we see is there was one done in 2001, but we don't see any done. But we do have a large number of inactive voters on our voter rolls. We've got nearly 400,000 inactive. They are registered, and the only thing they would have to do to go from inactive to active is to show up to vote or to sign a petition or take some other active voting expression of voting activity.
Correct.
I did pull from the census. I can get fellow board members in who wanted it. It's a public document available from the Census Bureau. Average voter registration nationwide is 72%, 72.1% as of 2004. We'll all remember there was a big voter registration push in 2004, and that was up from 69.5% in 2000. If you assume, and this is not a fair assumption, but if you assume that all those inactive voters that they're either deceased, moved on, other things have happened where they should be canceled, that would put us at about 68%, which would be under the average. I mean, clearly, I don't think that's a fair assumption that all be inactive.
Right.
But somewhere in between, it looks like we've got a job to do to figure out if there are potentially invalid voters on our voter rolls, or duplicate voters in our voter rolls, as you mentioned, that may be one source of concern. And I know this has the capability of becoming a very sensitive issue, because what we don't want is, without proper public notice of the process we're going through, voters, if they have been sent a confirmation notice, it gets returned, no activity sent. We still find there are people, the numbers are small percentage-wise, but there are voters who are now coming, they do still live there, they do still want to vote. And so we want to make sure that that notice happens, and that it happens in a timely way, so that if someone does get their registration canceled, they still have an opportunity to get registered, to get re-registered, to get a new registration card in, so they can exercise their vote.
We did post this on our website back in October when we first came up with the purge list, so people had time to re-register prior to the election. We didn't do any statistical information to see how many of those people actually did, but it was posted for a couple months on the website. Right now, Pat, Helen, and I discussed yesterday, we're trying to find anybody in the system that hasn't voted in a period of 4 years or longer from, what did we say, 2000 to the present, excluding this 2003 purge, to see if maybe we can see something on their transaction history, if they received a confirmation card or not. And then that would be a decision on the board's part if we wanted to, further see if those were the records that were missed being purged over the past years. Unfortunately, I couldn't get that report ready for this election. It's still running. But we did have a problem when we first hooked up with the Premier system, where records were not showing transaction history, and we're still having that problem. So that's why we don't feel safe just saying that somebody received the confirmation notice or not. MVRA states that you have to receive a confirmation notice before you cancel the record. So we want to make sure these records all received a confirmation notice.
Would the hard copies have been maintained of that return mail? Under our record retention schedule, we still have the return mail?
I never destroyed anything, so yes, if they were mailed and returned to this office, they are in storage somewhere.
That sounds like a project.
It's just a matter of where, because our storage has been moved so many times over the past 5 years.
Any other questions or comments from Mr. Franco?
Mike, on the first page, you talk about active and inactive status. Someone can achieve inactive or active status. And then on the second page, you pointed out these numbers of active and inactive. Do we have definitions for how those breakdowns are maintained?
Yeah, there is really no definition statutorily on what an active and inactive voter is. An inactive voter is a voter that maintains a good voting record. If they move, they change their address with us, they vote regularly, they don't fall into that category of the 4-year purge cycle. An inactive record is any mailing we send out from this office that comes back undeliverable. And I want to point that out too, which is why our inactives have grown so much over the past 2 years, is with the House Bill 3 mailing we've been doing, we've been remailing to inactive voters, because we have to hit every eligible voter with that mailing. So
are you saying if I voted consistently for 20 years and the House Bill 3 mail comes back undeliverable, I go to inactive?
yes.
Well, so I guess personally that troubles me a little bit. It would be helpful, I don't feel I'm as on top of this issue as, say, Rob, who's not thought about this way. It would be helpful to me, anyway, if you could give all the board members a definition of active and inactive.
Maybe if I can go a little further for it. inactive is just a status we use at the Board of Elections. Inactive voters are allowed to vote. They're good voters. The only thing is in the alphabetical poll book, for these 60-day notice people, we are required under House Bill 3 to put a comment above their signature line in the alphabetical poll book, notice returned to the Board of Elections, which is what we presently do. If you're a newly registered voter or changing your voting status, changing your address, changing your name, we send out a voter location notification card notifying you that we received your change. If that card comes back undeliverable, House Bill 3 requires us to put them in the poll book as must vote provisional because there's something wrong with the address. But inactive does not mean somebody cannot vote. Active, pending, and inactive are people that show in the poll list and they are able to vote. It's just a status we use to track those records that need to be purged every 4 years.
Okay, but some people move more often than others, I guess.
Oh, yes.
So those people are going to, the last thing you think about is telling the Board of Elections you changed your address. And I guess I'm just a little concerned about the terminology that we're using. That's all.
It's
Or at least I need to understand the terminology that we're using, so I got a better sense of what really this may mean.
I have a definition sheet I made up a few years back. I can send it
Can you
to
get that
everybody.
to the board members? I'd
Sure.
appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
My understanding, because I actually wanted to ask the same question for more of a definition of what inactive is, but actually what you described helped me understand it a little bit on top of what I already know, and that is, let's say a person does move more often or has moved and the address has changed. Now, if they're shown as inactive, let's say the House Bill 3 mailer has come back and then that line is on there, what that's going to elicit, we would hope, is a poll worker, and have you moved recently? Or maybe you need to be registered over here. Now, they may vote provisionally that time, or maybe that they're going to vote regular status. That's what they're going to determine there. But what our poll worker is going to help do is get their record updated, because the first thing you think of is not changing your registration, but maybe a good time to catch them is when they're coming to vote. Hey, we just caught this error. Let's get your record updated.
Prior to House Bill 3, we did the same thing, but the line in the poll book, if a card came back undeliverable, was put in as verify residence address. It was just a way of saying, hey, you registered to vote, we sent you out an acknowledgement notice. Why did that acknowledgement notice come back to us undeliverable if you're registering from this address? Did we miss your apartment number? Did we,
That's what you have a lot. So
But people do get confused because that's the original terminology with the National Voter Registration Act of '95 was to say if you get mailings back, put them in an inactive status. I was just a young fellow back in '95 and I had nothing to do with giving that inactive term here, but it's just a term that was stuck with our records over.
Do we have any analysis? I mean, do we know how many people of the inactives are in the basket of HB3 mailers not returned, and that's really kind of the only issue?
Yeah, we can
Okay.
get, I can get those numbers.
Could you get that breakdown to the board members, please?
And that's, as I say, I think it is not a fair assumption at all to assume all of these inactives are going to be people who should not be registered, and it's going to be breaking that
Right.
down and getting
Correct.
that, getting people down.
My hope is that we can find a group of these people that are inactive, that have not had any activity to their record for quite some time, that maybe we can identify that needed to be purged years ago, but were not, for whatever reason. To bring our numbers back a little bit more where they belong.
At least under 100%. That's sad. It would be nice to be perfect.
Yes, but we know that's not going to happen.
I just have a question sort of as a follow-up to the voter that came down, I think, at our last meeting, who had indicated that she had voted in every election and somehow she had fallen off the rolls and we had no voter history for her, no activity. And I think there was some suggestion that that was a DIMS issue. I guess my question is, I mean, how many of those people, if they don't come down and say, hey, what are you guys doing? I had to vote provisional, but I have voted in every election, haven't moved, haven't done any of that. Are those people going to be identified as inactive and or potentially purged because they've fallen off of DIMS? Somehow
I think
we've eliminated their voter history, or, I mean, is that an isolated instance, or?
those are isolated instances. They are in there. DIMS is not very user-friendly when it comes to checking for duplicate records or, how do I state this? It's both operator error and the system not being user-friendly. If an operator goes to enter another Mike DeFranco in the computer, I know there's like 10 or 15 Mike DeFrancos in there right now. If they select the wrong Mike DeFranco when the duplicate check pops up to enter that record, if Mike DeFranco's changing his address, if they select the wrong person, that other Mike DeFranco is gone, his voter history, everything. Our old system used to keep a canceled record of whoever you were. If you accidentally overwritten a record, it would keep a canceled record of that voter. So we couldn't make that mistake, or if we did make that mistake, we could just pull that voter right back up again and reactivate all their status. This system deletes the voter and you lose everything.
How long have we had the DIM system on the vote for the voter registry?
Since September 1st, 2006.
Oh, so it's since 2000.
And I was at a conference on Tuesday with Robin Roy and Emily Fagan, and I discussed this issue with them again. There's no fix in sight for it.
Is there anything that would alert the person, the operator, to,
What we have done internally is,
some sort of manual fix of it, of this problem?
well, what I did is I changed the way the duplicate search checks in the voter registration system now. I lowered the parameters so it will only search for somebody with the identical name. In other words, if you look up Mike DeFranco and you pop in his birth date of 9/8/24, 79, it will only find that
Oh, okay.
that record, so it's not listing all the Mike DeFrancos. When we originally got the system, and this was just till a few months back, it would list everybody with the name Mike DeFranco, and the lines are very thin, and the operator would, if the operator hit the wrong person, it would overwrite that record.
So do we ever back up those files so at least we can?
We do back them up, but to try and restore those, from what the IS department tells me, is a very lengthy process. It can be done.
But if there's a concern, can you then go back and check out the previously backed up file to see if that?
What we normally do is we now copy the alphabetical poll books after each election. So if we do get a call, like you were saying, we would go back a couple elections and look to see if that person's name was in the poll book. And then we know for sure, we can add them from that record. We can find their record from there.
Another Joe brings up a point, it's a very complicated process, clearly purging on many different levels for many different reasons. As I recall, the woman who was here last week, her situation arose because there's a database that Columbus provides. She came up registered in Lake County, came up registered in Cuyahoga County, so we purged her from the Cuyahoga County list, when in fact she should have been purged from the Lake County list, because she was registered in 2 different counties.
That is also another subject that was brought up in the conference. It's the program known as Dixie,
Right.
DIMSnet Interface something, I don't know what the actual name is, but that's the program that Premier uses to track duplicates in the state of Ohio. We have to use it. We have no choice. Any county that has Premier as their vendor has to use Dixie.
The issue becomes in her specific case, and I don't know why we canceled her in Cuyahoga. She should have been canceled in Lake. And is that an operator error, or is that the software?
It's the system itself. Every time we went to use Dixie since September 1st, 2004, we have had issues with it. They're all well documented. recently found out that records that we were merging, 2 county records from 2 separate counties, we were merging those records together. They were never coming off the Secretary of State's system. They would keep staying on the system, and we did not know this. So I think that record we talked about, Little John, was it?
Yes.
Was-
Yes.
Yeah.
We were planning, or I was planning on having that discussed in new business here, both on his end for the double voters, and then Betty to stand up and talk about the duplicate voters for, which will affect amendment certification. And in that issue, there was like 299 that went down to 277 that we were still checking because of that Dixie problem, where we have then found after sending out a letter, 29 are valid votes that will need to be counted. So she will.
Yeah,
Please address that, but it pertains to your question, Joe.
just to follow up on Jeff's comment, is there some manual? I mean, can we then, since we know this is an issue, is there some manual or some amendment to the program, somebody can write some sort of revised program or something to fix this issue, so at least it flags to our attention if there's 2 counties, we don't immediately purge Cuyahoga, but we say, oh, here's Lake and Cuyahoga, and then somehow that is flagged to somebody's attention to.
They addressed it with me down there that it's fixed now, and the system is working, so this will not happen again.
So what happened before?
I think what happened is, I believe this Little John lived in Portage, Betty? Portage County. We merged it, but it never, somebody merged it, either Portage, Betty, you know more about it, who merged it?
Mr. and Mrs. Littlejohn previously lived in Portage County. In 1999, they moved to Cuyahoga County. Since 1999, they have not missed voting in an election in Cuyahoga County. What happened is that Dixie, the state duplicating system, found that there were 2 Mona and Gregory Littlejohns. One set living in Cuyahoga, one set living in Portage County. It should have been the responsibility of Cuyahoga County to go in and keep them in Cuyahoga County, and it should have been the responsibility of Portage County to merge them to Cuyahoga County. That didn't happen. What resulted was that they were in both counties, and the state duplicate system, Dixie, decided they belong in Portage County. That's what happened. So, in an effort to be proactive, what we did, I talked to the IS department. They have gone through every voter whose provisional ballot was rejected in the presidential primary. They, whose were rejected because of interference from Dixie. That information is in the transaction law. What they did was come up with a list of voters, 299, reviewed the listing. Actually, there are 277 that fell within those parameters, and staff is currently pulling up all of those records, going into Dixie, pulling up the Dixie records, going into the state system, pulling up the state records, and determining exactly where those people belong. This will be part of the amendment to the presidential primary that will be going before the board.
But then what I'm trying to understand is the Little John case. Did Dixie automatically take them off of our rolls, or did somebody in our agency make that determination when it was brought to their attention through this Dixie system?
I cannot say who was responsible. I really can't. Okay?
It had to come from us. Dixie does not automatically cancel people.
Or it could have come from Portage County.
Or if Portage County,
Can Portage County take somebody off of our rolls in Cuyahoga County?
They shouldn't be able to, but if they wanted to keep a voter, and if they're in their system, they can keep a voter because that voter may have had activity there.
and then when our people looked up the Little Johns, it's showing them registered in Portage, and we put them as not registered here. So,
And this system doesn't tell us what person, what location, or what agency entered that transaction.
exactly, it does not presently give us the other county that the voter's in. When the transaction is saved, it doesn't give the operator when the transaction is saved. It's a very,
And is this issue should be addressed with the Secretary of State's office?
Oh, yeah, the Secretary of State's office was at the conference, and they were not very pleased with Premier's performance at Dixie. And we even met with the Secretary of State's office.
Was Marina?
No, we spoke with Tim Rossi.
Was Marina?
Gus Maringus at the Secretary of State's office. I met with him and another gentleman. I think Lou was in the meeting too, in regards to this Dixie program. They are not pleased with it at all.
When I was down for director, deputy director training, there was probably 15 other counties there. All of them have, using DIMS had the same problem. So it's a server issue that's connected into the state Dixie program. It was all brought up to Pat Wolf and Gretchen and Chris Mann's attention at that point as well.
Okay, as Jeff says, it's a very complicated problem. And I guess to the extent that there are updates on this, if we could get those updates in writing, and make it better retained, especially auditorium, that would be appreciated.
Betty, since you were up there and finished it, so we don't need to phone back up there. You're going to have it finished tomorrow, or by the end of next week.
Yes, by the end of next
And
week.
you have approximately 250 still to go through.
Well, we have less than that. I now have 4 other staff members besides myself that are working on it, so we're really making a dent in it. So Linda, you will be getting that information a lot sooner than I had initially anticipated. And it will be in spreadsheet form. It will identify the voters and the information concerning each individual case, including the 2 that we got from Board Member Frost. That information will also be included because those 2 individuals fell within that same scenario as to why they had to vote a provisional ballot and why their registration had been canceled.
And these are, again, they were rejected provisional ballots because they could not find their registration. So we rejected them, sent them a letter, and of the ones we've gone through or have contacted us, there's approximately 26.
26 actually called or physically came down to the board.
And they should have been counted.
Correct.
They were
But like I
registered
said
voters.
earlier, in an effort to be proactive, we just got a list with everybody that fell within that category, and we're looking at everything, every record that's included.
We also sent letters to our rejected provisionals, and I found out that we're probably one of the only counties in the state that actually do that. So,
It's very good that we do, in addition to the 26, 2 contacted me. One was in Bay Village, the other in Parma.
Right.
Just so I catch it, when you refer to what you're going through, is this Dixie, that you're commenting about that? Okay. Thank you, and thank you. What I would like to see, Pat and Mike, when you get a chance, is maybe a little outline. In addition, here's our plan. This is how we intend to address the purge. And I realize it'll take some time, and timing's important. As you point out, you didn't want to purge on October 9th when the October 11th was the registration cutoff. But I really would like to see some thought here. I mean, we're 23% over the national average in registered voters. And while you hear the press, we got 1 million voters, the reality is we don't, and we shouldn't. And we need to get that in order, so our numbers are more accurate. So I guess we're meeting on the 23rd. If you could, I'm just looking for an outline about here's how we intend to attack the problem, and then any additional information standing other board members might need.
And we're prohibited from doing that purge any closer than 90 days before the federal election, is that correct?
right, we're not allowed to purge within 90 days of the federal election.
It just
I think,
sorry.
No, I was just saying, so that sometime about around August
yeah,
6th, 8th, and somewhere in there, counting backwards.
right now our goal is to get the voter history for the March election done, in a timely manner so we can do the 2003 purge, at least get those 35,000 people taken care of. And now it's a matter of trying to find out who prior probably should have been purged and how are we going to handle that? Are we going to mail a new confirmation notice out? Do we do that? Do we have to wait the statutorily 4-year cycle, or can we just purge them? Is that a board decision? Can we do that?
I was told that will take us an additional 2 months to do voter history, is that correct? So in his time frame that we're looking at, we will have to have a board decision. If we don't get the voter history done until June, we would have that in June and July, basically, for the board to understand this, make a decision, and us to purge it, being compliant before the 90 days.
Voter history is a very lengthy process, and with this election, we had the problem with people not being marked in the book as the party, so it's even making it that much more difficult to do.
Just to follow up on Jeff's thought, you could give us kind of the history of the problem in addition to the kind of the steps that are in it.
For the purging,
Yes, and I forget, like, kind of Joe, exactly when the STIM system came in, so just kind of walking us through it, and having that as almost like a historical document would be helpful. So we get the whole
Give
picture.
that little chronology that sort of tells us,
like I say, I can explain from 2003 up, but prior to that, I really wasn't involved too much.
I didn't just say that.
Yeah.
And you've done some of it here already with this document. So.
I've asked our intern to go through the board minutes from 2000 and 2001 and look where, if there was any discussion, discussed at the board meeting, how many were purged and why they retracted the purge, and hopefully we can get some evidence there, or at least some fundamental understanding what they did in the past.
Okay, thank you for that report and other new business.